Today we're talking about e-bikes and why they get so much hate. Here on Big Brain Party, we focus on education and learning, and to do so we have to put aside some of our old ideas and be open to new ideas. I feel that this is a topic that's not being talked about in this way, and I feel responsible to share my perspective on the e-bike issue. Today's video is going to be a little bit long. It's more of a discussion than a visual treat, so feel free to pop in some earbuds and listen to it like a podcast. You don't need to watch everything that's going on. But I feel like we still have a long way to go to learn about e-bikes and trail access in the mountain bike world. Here in Sedona, Arizona, we have over 200 miles of single track in town. None of that single track is allowed for e-bikes. Here in Sedona, our national forest treats e-bikes like motorized vehicles, so they're allowed anywhere a Jeep is allowed or a motorcycle. Since motorcycles are not allowed on our 200 miles of single track, neither are e-bikes. This is a hot topic in the mountain bike world, and it's greatly misunderstood. So today we're going to learn. So I invite you to sit back, listen with an open mind, put aside some of your preconceived notions, and first seek to understand, and then seek to be understood. So today we're going to be riding e-bikes on an e-bike legal trail here in Sedona called Broken Arrow. This is a famous rock crawling Jeep trail. Lots of tourists will probably see some pink Jeeps out here. It goes right next to White Line, a famous spot you all know. But as we go, we're going to talk about this issue about e-bikes, trail access, land use, and how we can help. First of all, you need to know a little bit about my background. I am a disabled person right now. I have a neurological disease. If it weren't for e-bikes, I wouldn't be pedaling right now. I wouldn't be able to be on a bike ride at all. I'd have to be sitting home relaxing. And so e-bikes have opened up a way to keep enjoying the outdoors and mountain biking despite my health challenges and my disability. I'm also an outdoor ethics educator. I'm a certified Tread Lightly master trainer. That's the educational arm of the Forest Service, where we teach people about trail ethics, trail access, how to be kind to other users on the trail, trail maintenance, advocacy, that sort of thing. I'm also an environmentalist and an outdoor conservationist, and I believe we should protect nature and leave no trace and take care of it. There's kind of two schools of thought with outdoor recreation. School of thought one is I'll do whatever I want. Who cares what the future or other people think? And school number two says I think I have a responsibility to leave this place better than I found it and to help other people in the future continue to have access to this. I fit in school of thought number two. I'm also a longtime mountain biker. I've been mountain biking for over 28 years. I'm also a hiker, a backpacker, a off-road motorcycle rider, a Jeep rock crawler, a overland explorer, a camper. I love getting outside in so many different ways. And one thing you learn as an outdoors ethics educator is that we need to have a balance. The hikers don't get their way all the time. The motorized people don't get their way all the time. The no access, shut it all down people don't get their way all the time. And we need a balanced approach to get a little bit for everybody. So I believe there should be motorized access. Personally, I'd love to see more motorized single track for motorcycles. That's one of my favorite ways to recreate outdoors. I also don't think all hiking trails should be open to mountain bikes, and I'm not sure if I think all mountain bike trails should be open to e-bikes. I'm still trying to decide that on my own. Personally, I wish Sedona had some e-bike friendly single track because I'm restricted to riding these fire roads now, which is still great. I'm so glad I get to do this. But I would definitely be riding single track on my e-bike if it were legal here. But I don't think all single track in Sedona should be open to mountain bikes or e-bikes. I know that sounds like I'm anti-e-bike or anti-mountain bikes access in general. I think I just have a bigger perspective being a recreationist from different area groups as well. Here on Big Brain Party, we have a higher caliber of audience in the comments. And we invite people to have educated civil discourse in the comments below. So I'd invite you to be civil and less emotional and more fact-based in talking about this issue. But I would love to hear from you, but make sure you watch the whole video first. So first of all, we need to talk a little bit about the history of mountain bikes and trail access. Back in the 70s, when mountain bikes started picking up popularity and came on the scene, it created a lot of conflict. There's now these hippies with long hair riding balloon tire bikes on hiking trails at pretty high speeds. The hikers were not fans of this. They didn't know what to do with this new segment, and there was a conflict on whether they should be allowed on the trails or not. In the 60s, the Wilderness Act was passed, and it says that no mechanized vehicles are allowed in wilderness areas. And for about 10 years, they were arguing, were bicycles mechanized? They didn't even have mountain bikes. They're just talking regular bikes. Are those allowed in wilderness areas? And in 77, the Forest Service decided, nope, they're considered mechanized, not motorized, but they have mechanisms that is not kind of natural propulsion like hiking or equestrian use, horseback riding. And so bicycles were prohibited in wilderness areas. And they still are. That still holds today. There are many, many places designated wilderness that bicycles, not talking e-bikes, I'm talking pedal bikes with no pedal assist, are illegal in those areas. And that's just the law. That's how it is. But as these conflicts arose in the 70s with these new riders, certain groups started to form and started to talk to the trail users and talk to the landowners that own this land, and they advocated for mountain biking. And one of the ways that they got permission to have mountain biking allowed on hiking trails is they promised it would never be motorized access. They said, look, yes, it's mechanized. Yes, there's a mechanism. We've got chains and derailleurs and wheels and stuff, but it's not motorized use. So we shouldn't be lumped into the motorized use category. We think there's a place where bicycles can enjoy the outdoors and have less of an impact than where motorized cycles do. And that was a sticky relationship too, but eventually the hiking associations accepted that and said, you know what, as long as you're non-motorized, we'll let you have access to the single track that's already here. And this evolved in different ways in different pockets throughout the world. And I should add that this whole conversation about e-bike use and trail access depends on where you are. If you're in a place like Moab or Sedona, where these trails have been here for 100 years of people hiking on them, and then mountain biking is introduced to it, there's more potential for conflict, because these trails were originally hiking trails. Well, not this one. But because the hikers had exclusive access to them back in the day, we now introduce a new recreational opportunity wanting those same trails, and of course they're going to dig in their heels and say, no, we don't want that here. And so there's more conflict there. So in places like this where we promise them, don't worry, we'll never be motorized, it's just mechanized travel, we got in under those conditions. Well, now with the advent of e-bikes, we're kind of breaking that promise. And I know a lot of people don't consider these motorized, and they think they should be designated differently than motorcycles. And I agree to some point, but I also feel like they have a motor, and that's kind of a sticky situation. And that's why there's so much argument. People either believe these are motorized, or they think they're such low power they should just be categorized as bicycles. And I can see both points. However, you don't need to convince me. You don't need to convince the guys on Pink Bike. You don't need to convince the guys on Reddit and Instagram, the mountain bikers, that they should be legal. We're barking up the wrong tree. We need to convince the hikers and the equestrians and the other trail users. In large part, it's not the mountain bikers that are threatening trail access with EMTBs. It's the other users. It's the hikers. They can't tell the difference between an e-bike or a pedal bike. Therefore, it's easier for them to just ban the whole thing. They feel like we kind of gave them a bait and switch there. We promised we would never have motorized access. And here comes the bike industry trying to make some more money, slipping this in, trying to pretend like these are the same thing as non-motorized bicycles. And I see why the industry's doing it. They want more money, they want more sales. It's an exciting new market. But I fear that we in the industry have pushed this way too hard without thinking about the potential impacts. Now, if we never lose trail access because of EMTBs, I have no problem with EMTBs, that's fine. But if we lose our access and we lose our seat at the table with the hiking groups, when we go there and we say, hey, we'd like to talk about this area of land and whether mountain bikes should be allowed, they're gonna say, No thanks. You guys snuck those e-bikes in, and now we have semi-motorized access on our trails. You're not part of this discussion. This is hiking only. We've kind of shot ourselves in the foot. Back in October 2023, Moab lost 317 miles of motorized use. Now, these are Jeep roads just like what I'm on. They're not hardcore rock crawling things. They're access to backcountry campsites. They're access to one of my favorite shuttles. Now, I can't shuttle it because it's off limits to bicycles, motorcycles, and vehicular traffic. It's just closed. And that was from people following the rules. That's not some rogue users going out there and riding it illegally. It was already open to motorized travel. But we still lost 317 miles of trail that we used to have. So that just goes to further illustrate the point that there are trail users out there who very much oppose bicycle use, who very much oppose motorized use and vehicle use. And so rather than trying to talk with our mountain bike buddies at the bar after a ride about why e-bikes should be legal there, we need to be talking to the other people, the other trail users that are up against us. There are people trying to shut down White Rim Road in Canyonlands National Park, shut it down to motorized vehicles and bicycles. There are people trying to make most of Moab wilderness so that bicycles are completely banned from there. This has nothing to do with e-bikes, and this has been going on before e-bikes. But by poaching mountain bike trails on e-bikes, we're just adding fuel to the fire. We're not helping the discussion. And so if you are of the mindset of helping the future have more access and helping open doors to better discussions about this, I think we owe it to ourselves to obey the rules about e-bikes. Now, I've heard all the excuses and justification that people give themselves as to why they think they're allowed to poach and ride illegal trails on their e-bikes. And I realize that different areas of the world have different cultures about bike riding. For example, Southern California, 98% of the trails people ride are illegal. They're private property and they poach them, and that's just what you do in Southern California. But then they come here to Sedona and they think, you know what, I'm used to poaching things and ignoring signs anyway. I'm going to do the same thing here in Sedona. Well, the climate's very different here in Sedona. We have tons and tons of tourists here. We have lots of hikers, we have equestrian users, we have jeepers, we have motorcycle users, we have mountain bikers, we have e-bikers, and we have a history of not allowing EMTBs here. And so when people come and poach, it hurts trail relationships here. When we meet with trail users about opening new trails and having new access, inevitably those discussions come up saying, yeah, but everybody's bringing their e-bikes and just riding them anyway, even though it's illegal. Other people say, but you know what? No one's ticketing me, so they must not really care. You can see why that's a problematic attitude as well. Other people say, you know what, in 20 years, it's all going to be legal to EMTBs anyway, so I'm just starting early and getting it done now. Once again, this is not helping our position. And if I were a hiker and we allowed mountain bikes to come in under the premise that there would never be motorized access, and now it's slipping in this way, I'd be pretty ticked, and I'd be less inclined to invite mountain bikers to the discussion next time there's trail and land use opportunities. Another popular justification for breaking the rule and riding EMTBs on trails where they're not allowed is, but I'm disabled or my father's disabled and he'd never be able to get out if it weren't for that. I get where you're coming from because I'm disabled as well. And this neurological disease and my crippling arthritis that I have means I don't get to ride hardly ever. And when I do, it's usually an e-bike. And I moved to Sedona for the trails. There's 200 miles of pristine single track here that I can't ride because of my disability. Well, let's pretend e-bikes didn't exist. Let's pretend we just had bicycles and motorcycles. Motorcycles would be the only way I get to get out on the trail. Does that mean I have a right to ride motorcycles on non-motorized trails? Well, no, obviously not. And actually, the Forest Service trumps the ADA. So even though I may have a disability and the American Disabilities Act protects me, it doesn't allow me to do whatever I want in the national forest just because I'm disabled. So rules still apply. I would love to see some of these 200 miles made legal to e-bikes so that I could enjoy some single track. But I don't know that it all needs to be just because I have a disability. I don't think I have a right to ride my bike wherever I want just because I'm disabled. Now that's super controversial, and I know a lot of people are not going to like me taking that stand. I love people being able to get out. I'm so glad e-bikes exist. I am so glad that it allows me to get out here today. I wouldn't be out if it weren't for e-bikes. But that justification alone doesn't fly. It's kind of like saying, you know what, I can't walk because I'm disabled, therefore I'm going to take a razor down to the Grand Canyon down to the bottom. Obviously, there are limits, and we make accommodations for people with disabilities. That means if you're disabled, like me, and you need an e-bike to recreate, you're going to be stuck to motorized routes. And I'm okay with that. That's why motorized routes exist, so that we can ride motorized vehicles there. So a lot of people say there's nowhere to ride e-bikes, therefore I'm doing it here because I'm disabled. There are places. It's just far more limited. Look at being a motorcycle rider and trying to ride in nature. You have to drive a ways to find single track trails, and that's unfortunate. I wish there were more motorized trails where guys could take their motorbikes into the hills and into the mountains and go for miles and miles and miles, but those are shrinking. Those are getting shut down. Trail users are kicking them out because they don't like motorized access as much. That's a bummer that motorized access is shrinking. That means on these e-bikes in this situation, there are fewer and fewer places to ride. But we can still ride them places. We just have to change our expectation. I know we would love access to all the mountain bike trails on the world and the networks that land managers and groups worked hard to build and protect and lobby for and push to get mountain bike access there. But when we push the motorized use in there when they originally didn't want it, we strain relationships and it doesn't help. Now that covers existing trails, where we're trying to kind of get into places that were established before e-bikes were a thing. But with new trail construction, we have a new opportunity. We have an opportunity to promote e-bike use. And when people are making new trails that people haven't hiked for 100 years with their family, we can absolutely bring the e-bike discussion to the table and talk about whether e-bikes provide more of an environmental impact, whether the speeds should be limited, whether it increases the amount of traffic on the trail. But now we can have discussions about that, knowing about e-bikes. And we're seeing that in a lot of places. For example, Bentonville, Arkansas. Bentonville wasn't known for its hiking trails. It didn't have hiking trails before Walmart and those guys came in and built all those mountain bike trails. And because it was built with mountain bikers in mind, and we weren't fighting any old hikers that were get off my lawn on your bike sort of people, it was real easy to make it allowed to EMTBs as well. Why not? We're not going to have any user conflicts there, except for maybe the guy that's ticked off that someone blew past him on a climb. But that's a small potatoes compared to this whole issue about land use. So as we build new trail areas, or if your zone is purposely building mountain bike specific trails, they have a much easier opportunity to give EMTBs access than we do in the West, that are fighting against people trying to shut it down from all cyclists, trying to shut it down from all motorized users, and it's just a different climate everywhere you go. In Europe, where there's massive climbs and you're up in the Alps and in the middle of these huge mountain ranges, people don't seem to care, and so I'm all pro e-bike there. It's just these certain places where we have strained relationships with people for years about mountain bikes in the first place, and now we're just making it even harder for mountain bikers to gain their ground. So if you're visiting these places, try to not take your mentality of where you live to these places. I know that's impossible, but a lot of people in San Diego will come here to Sedona and say, I don't care. A, they're not ticketing me. B, I'm not hurting anything. C, I ride illegal trails all the time in San Diego anyway. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to poach these trails. No one's going to say anything. No big deal. That doesn't help the locals in that area. That doesn't help us have proactive conversations when they want to build new trails somewhere else. So this is a controversial topic on all the forums and all the comments sections, where we all get in there guns blazing, trying to tell people our point of view and trying to change everyone's mind and back it up with facts. I think that little bit of history lesson will help us have a better context to why this is so controversial. For me, if e-bikes never cause loss of trail access anywhere, I'm fine with them on every trail that a mountain bike is allowed on. But I know that in some areas they just add fuel to the fire and they risk our chance of having open discussions about trail access there. I like e-bikes. Like I said, they get me out, and I'm still having fun today. Even though it's not single track, I'm really enjoying this trail. I will continue making a case for e-bikes where I think they belong. But I don't think every trail should be e-bike friendly. I don't think every trail should be mountain bike friendly. I even think there's some areas we probably shouldn't have hiking trails. I think our future generations deserve a chance to preserve this wonderful landscape, even though selfishly we'd love to just ride everywhere we want, running over bushes, making new trails, putting jump lines everywhere. But we have to balance that. I also think the mountain bike industry has a big responsibility to think about trail access. This goes on so many levels. It goes on releasing your shred-its where people are shrouping and throwing dirt everywhere. It goes on filming illegal poached trails for your press release. Man, that happens all the time. Even here in Sedona, a company will come out with a new bike. They'll ride it on a non-bicycle trail, a hiking-only trail, and they don't care because it's unique and it looks good and it sells bikes. We need to do better of that as an industry. We need to stop looking at dollar signs as a reason to ignore our etiquette, reasons to ignore our trail access in these difficult discussions. And I know that people want to sell more bikes, and a lot of you watching work in the mountain bike industry, and you need this income to support your family. But I don't think pushing EMTBs without thinking about the consequences in some areas is the way to do it. But I'm pretty disappointed in Sedona's local mountain bike shops. The 2 mountain bike shops here rent EMTBs. And they just say, well, we tell them they're not allowed on the single track, but we can't control where they ride them. You're putting the tool in their hands to strain our trail relationships here for profit. And with 200 miles of single track, do we really think they're sticking to the 2 or 3 Jeep trails in all of town? People don't come here to ride this trail. They come here to ride single track. And so I think the bike shops could do a better job at promoting responsible trail use too. Now, another thing a lot of people don't understand is all the different agencies that manage the land in the United States. We have the BLM, we have state parks, we have national parks, we have national monuments, we have national forests, we have private land, we have state trust land, and each of these is managed differently. And so sometimes we think, oh, these are allowed in BLM land, therefore they're allowed on all national land. Or these are allowed in national parks, therefore they're allowed in national forests. And I hear those arguments a lot, and it just shows that people don't really understand who manages the land in different areas. And we kind of hear what we want to hear. We hear that it's allowed in place A, and so we assume it's allowed in B, C, D, E, and F, and G. So we also have to be careful when we just assume that because our national forest allows it, that therefore where we go on vacation, their national forest will allow it as well. Each national forest can manage it differently and does manage it differently. One other thing that we encountered a ton in the jeeping and rock crawling world was people driving on trails that weren't allowed and saying, well, there weren't any signs saying no motorized vehicles. It's our job to know the land access that we're on instead of relying on signs saying no e-bikes allowed. We need to do our research. Trailforks is a great way. You use the e-bike filter. It'll filter out what's legal and what's not. Talk to locals, talk to bike shops. Hopefully they're steering you right. But it's our responsibility to make sure the trails we're riding are legal. And just saying, well, it doesn't say no e-bikes, that's not a valid enough excuse to assume they're legal there. I think it's fair to say that nature's a big part of why many of us ride mountain bikes and EMTBs. If this was all concrete jungle and skyscrapers, we'd still probably ride it because it'd be fun, but it wouldn't be the same as if we had this natural landscape around us. And I feel like it's our duty to protect this and to protect our access to it. Because very rarely, when trails get shut down, do they ever get reopened. It's just too hard to reopen a shut down trail. And so we have all these open trails available to us through the mountain bike network. And I'm concerned that if we just throw caution to the wind, ride them anyway because we're here on vacation, or because we're disabled, or because it's hard to ride a normal bike, or because all we did was bring our e-bike, or because our buddy said it was okay, or whatever, we're risking losing that. And it took us a very long time to get to this point where we had access to these trails. So I just wanted to share that perspective. It's different than the narrative that the bike industry is pushing. It's different than what you hear on the forums. And it's these hiking groups, of which I belong as well, some of them, that want to shut mountain bikes out of all recreation. There are certain groups that would be so happy if mountain bikes were never allowed on single track again. And those are the people we need to work on convincing that e-bikes belong here. Not our fellow mountain bikers, where we're just in this echo chamber arguing the same things. It's not mountain bikers who are shutting down mountain bike trails because of e-bikes. It's conservationists, it's people who see them as motorized vehicles, it's hikers, it's horseback riders, it's people who've had negative interactions with EMTBs. I've been yelled at so many times here in Sedona as I'm climbing, not on an EMTB, when they're like, EMTBs aren't allowed here. And I said, thank you for promoting that. You're right, they're not. I'm not on an EMTB. This is a bicycle. And I see the hate that these hikers already have. They've got their pitchforks and their torches ready to go. We're seeing people sabotage and booby trap trails because they don't like mountain bikes on them, and some of that's due to e-bike use as well. So the best way to promote e-bike use and to get them authorized where you live is to follow the rules and be an ambassador for e-bikes instead of an antagonist, an anarchist who just does whatever the heck they want. Forget what everybody else wants. I'm here. I came a long way to enjoy this, and I'm going to enjoy it however I want. Doesn't matter what the future happens. That's the problem. And so I propose that we have a responsibility to recreate responsibly, to promote kindness, to have civil dialogue and discussions about this topic. And then we can open more doors of discussion. We can show these hikers the impact studies on how e-bikes don't create more trail erosion. We can talk about how it helps other groups that are disabled get out onto the trail, and we can have civilized discussions. But if they come in guns blazing with all the negative experiences they've had with e-bikers, there's very little that we can do. So I hope that was interesting food for thought. I know there will be very passionate comments down below, but I encourage you to be civil. And here on Big Brain Party, we're a little bit more elevated from the average YouTube comment. We don't just spew hate and stir the pot. We come with our brains and we talk and we debate and we argue and we think about different aspects of this. What is your area like? Is your climate e-bike friendly where they can ride anywhere mountain bikes can? Or is it more like Moab and Sedona where there are certain e-bike trails and certain non-e-bike trails? If you learned something today and benefited from this video, consider subscribing for more content like this. Here at Big Brain Party, we focus on education and learning and breaking down barriers and looking at things through new eyes. We dive into technical stuff, we dive into interesting stuff, we do tests and experiments to see what we can learn to educate mountain bikers across the world. If you like what you see and you'd like to contribute in some way, I've got links down below. You can donate through Buy Me a Coffee. You can become a patron for Patreon exclusive content. And you can just promote positivity and goodness in the world by being who you are. Thanks for watching, everybody. You guys are amazing. Take care.